Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's workshop. Slightly different, not about e-commerce for a change, a bit more open-ended with the topic of what would a consent-free digital analytics solution actually look like. A bit hypothetical. We'll see how the discussion goes. I'll be presenting the reasons behind this, what my ideal solution would be, what it looks like, and then hopefully a bit of debate back and forth. I can imagine some people would say, no, that's just wrong. You shouldn't be doing this. This shouldn't be possible. Others may say, actually, that's fine, but let's capture a bit more information. I want a bit more than that. So if I want to see both sides of it, I have to think myself in the middle there. One thing I don't want today to be, and I'll repeat this later on as well, is to become more of a GDPR, what's legal, what's best practice, cookie consent banners, etc. That stuff's interesting, vital, but not the purpose of today. But let's share my screen and we're about ready to get started then, I think. For everyone, there is a new feature in Remo and it's very, very exciting for me. They're called Remojis. You have a look in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen below the chat participants Q&A section, and you got three options: the applause, always appreciated; the thumbs up, which I guess is similar; or the quizzical look if you're thinking Peter's talking too fast or about something weird. So feel free to try those things out. Hey, thank you to whoever that was. While kicking things off, feel free to drop in the chat as well. It's always nice to know where people are from and to say hello. That'd be great. The Q&A feature is always the best way to ask questions. I'm probably going to talk now for the next 15, 20 minutes, mostly. I might try and save the Q&A to the end today. But please drop your questions there. The chat's okay as well, but the Q&A actually works better. And when I do open things up for questions, please feel free to raise your hand if you'd like to ask your question directly rather than the Q&A. I love where everyone comes from. It's just amazing. Azerbaijan, if I pronounce it correctly. Thank you very much for coming and joining us, Okran. Okay, the quick introduction, as always, for those people who don't know me so well, g'day, my name is Peter. I'm an Australian. I was in London for 16 years. Now I'm over here in Haarlem in the Netherlands. Really liking it. Today's actually quite nice and sunny. That's good. Netherlands getting kicked out of the Euros was frustrating. I wanted to go on and win it just to have the experience, but oh well. I've been working in digital analytics since 2006. I had my own agency, L3 Analytics, since 2010. Merged to become Leap 3, sold it to our email in 2018, and exited that last year. So I've been doing this for a long time, worked back and forth, mostly Google Analytics, across all sectors. I've encountered a lot of different problems and found solutions for them over the years. I'm also the founder of Measure Camp, which is happening tomorrow. Hopefully, a few people are joining that. That's a digital analytics unconference, which started in 2012 and has now spread around the world. It's gone virtual the past couple of years and hopefully back in person late this year and from next year onwards. Fingers crossed. And now I'm back freelancing myself as a data strategy director under the banner of ZHS Orchards. But I'm bad at selling myself. But moving on, the whole point of these workshops, I write blog posts. This is a bit different. I can talk more through this. You can ask me questions. And I think my ideas are too scattered to become well into a formal course. We'll be here for about 45 minutes, 50 minutes, hopefully. If you're in your lunch break, please eat your lunch. That's the whole point here. I'll talk for about 20 minutes. It's been going longer. I apologize. I like talking, apparently. But hopefully lots of chance for Q&A. These sessions should be practical. I mean, in a way, I'll admit today's session is probably less practical. It's more theoretical. It may become practical in the future. It definitely should be educational. And the point here, I like sharing my knowledge. I want to get some feedback. I want you to challenge my ideas, help me to learn myself. And of course, I'm a freelancer. This is also about lead generation. Get in touch or tell people about me. I think they could use my help. So, cookie consent banners, otherwise known as what we all hate, hopefully, because right now, these are absolutely everywhere. You go to any page on the website, any website, and you start seeing these cookie consent banners. They come in all shapes and styles. They look different. They're asking you to press some button so you can continue. Often I'm quite sure, do you accept all? Do you reject all? What do you press? Do you spend 10 minutes going through different options? These are just very, very aggravating. Can I get a thumbs up? In the emojis, bottom right corner if you agree, these are really annoying things. One of these, yes, cool, I got a couple there. It can't be just me. But I mean, the reason behind them makes sense though. The whole purpose here, it's come from the laws. The e-privacy directive in Europe, it's been followed by GDPR, and the new e-privacy regulation coming out at some point soonish. And the whole reason behind these cookie consent banners isn't that title there, it's to protect people's privacy. People should not be tracked across the internet. You should not be able to capture information about people and sell it to other companies without the user getting some benefit from this. So the idea behind them, I really applaud. I think it's great. And with that, I mean, what it's meant to be is if you're dropping cookies on people, if you're identifying people and it's for your own benefit, not for the user's benefit, you have to get consent for this. And the key part there is the user should get really clear and complete information. So they can read the information and go, all right, that cookie to me is fine. I can't drop that cookie. These ones, no, I don't want you to do so. So they've been a really informed decision. That's the whole purpose. I think it's great. In reality, though, in my opinion, the current way cookie consent banners are implemented and are presented to users, they're actually bad because users do not receive their clear and complete information. Instead, there's dark patterns can be used to try and get acceptance. It's just confusing. It's overwhelming. For me personally, and the thing is like, I live in digital. It's what I do. I just tick usually accept all or reject all even, and it's random what I choose. So the purpose, the point behind them is gone. We're not making informed decisions for what's best for us, for our privacy. As a result of it, you click on anything to remove the barrier, and our privacy is not being protected, not being respected. This isn't a good solution. Beyond the users, it's also bad for companies. It costs you money, people's resources, to actually implement solutions. That's another cost. It takes you time just to research it. It's confusing to figure out what to do and how to do it. I mean, even with best intentions, it can be hard to do. And then you implement a solution, and what happens? You lose traffic. The visitor says, no, I don't want your cookies. I don't want your analytics cookies, or possibly ignore everything. And if set correctly, you then don't track them. You can overcome that. You can embrace the dark patterns and do things which are in that slight grey area and try to make it confusing as possible, and then you get more information back. But that's, again, it's the wrong thing to do. But you lose the traffic. Beyond the traffic, you lose the insights. And that's what's important because, I mean, it's nice to know you had 10,000 visitors, but big deal. But it's important to know there's a bug in this form. People can't use that page there when they're using Firefox. These are the insights you need to actually fix the website issues, improve performance, and you've lost the ability to do so due to the cookie banners. And that's bad for users because they get error messages like this, or they ask to enter telephone numbers with no spaces, dashes, or separators, because that's smart. And therefore, their website experience isn't as good as it could be. I mean, if you shut down all analytics tracking, websites will get a lot worse. And that's bad. Bad for the companies, also bad for the users. So this is no one wins out of this. Well, I say no one wins. At some point, it's sure to start happening. Lawyers will start doing these class actions against the websites, the companies. They'll win because companies haven't got it right. And then we've got winners, the lawyers. The users lose, the websites lose, the lawyers win. That's just bad. but not something I've really sort of fixed. I want to explain different. But first, a quick side point. This is just it's a personal frustration I just want to vent and get out into the open. The focus here is all about cookies. And that to me that's wrong, because the regulations are about people's privacy. We need to protect that, and I agree with this. The banners, though, all I say is, can we get consent to drop cookies on you? And that's only part of the story. And the worst thing is we go, well, cookies are bad, but everything is okay. But cookies are exactly the same as digital fingerprinting. It's still identifying individuals. I mean, if you actually pass through a unique identifier, an ID, in a URL query parameter, which got passed through from page to page to page, no cookies, cookieless solution, it's great, but you're still tracking people individually across the website, and that's bad. So I wish the solution, and again, personal venting here, is that the consent banners didn't ask, are you got these cookies or those cookies, but are you okay being tracked by analytics tools? Are you okay being tracked for advertising tools, and so on? Make it about the tools, make it technology agnostic, because that's the important thing I think about the privacy side of it. And with that, there's that frustration, a little bit irritated by this, the new wave of analytics tools. There's a fair few coming out there with best intentions, privacy-friendly alternatives, and they say that we're great, we don't use cookies, they're all about privacy. And instead they use digital fingerprinting. And to a degree, this could be okay because it is only 1 day long. From what I've done the research about that, the digital fingerprint only lasts for a single day. And so they aren't tracking users across multiple days. I'm actually okay with it. But to say what they're doing is right, and they believe they don't use cookies, so therefore they're compliant with GDPR, that's just wrong. As someone that has said here, the law is already technology agnostic. That's correct. It's the way people think about it which is wrong. It's not about cookies, it's about the technology, about the tracking. So people say they are GDPR compliant, no cookie notices required, fully compliant with GDPR, etc. They're actually wrong, and they should know better. Cookies, digital fingerprinting, it's the exact same thing if you're tracking users. Apart from that, I agree with what they're doing. I think with their solutions, it's actually similar to what my solution is. You'll come into that in a minute. They actually shouldn't need cookie compliant banners. They shouldn't need any tracking consent banners because it does respect people's privacies. So Marcus has said there just about the fact they do fingerprints. They change a lot of 24 hours. Well, yeah, it is. They do respect people's privacy, as they say, so I'm fine with that. But that does not mean they're compliant with GDPR based on the current interpretation of it. That's the difference. We can discuss that either later or possibly another time. The side issue, the fact they're on terms of GA, they're very simple data points. That's a whole different point discussion as well. So, web banks tracking without consent. They say they can do it with their tools. In a way, I actually agree with them, just not with the current interpretation with GDPR. But what could it look like? Because I think a balance should be possible. We respect users' privacy, everything's anonymized, but the website owners get the data they need to understand where the website is broken and to make the website experience better for the users. That's what I want to focus on. There has been this hashtag floating around, no consent, no tracking. Stefan Hammel's one person using it. And it's a really simple rule. If you don't get consent, don't do tracking. Now, see, I'm saying different to that. I'm saying no consent, still allow a level of tracking. And so in response to this, I'm going to try and propose the thin edge of the wedge. If you've heard that term before, what's the smallest possible thing you can capture with no consent? And my example here is, could you capture a page hit counter? The number of hits to any page on the website. Totally anonymized. That, in my opinion, should be fine. Marcus has raised a really interesting point. Marcus, can you drop that into the Q&A section? I might come to that question discussion point later on. It's a really nice point, measurement and tracking being different. But a page hit counter, surely that's okay with no consent being given. And if you're okay with that, would you okay with a website tracker? Still anonymized, still just counting the number of unique page hits across the website. It's basically a session counter. And if that's okay, what's the next step? And what I want to find with this is where's that line getting drawn? If you're okay with this one very little simple thing, which hopefully no one can argue against, and I'm very aware it's a thin edge of the wedge approach, where do you draw the line between what's okay and what's not? And that's what I find interesting. So to go through my solution, and this solution is not unique to me. Those privacy tools are actually very similar solution as well. Just with digital fingerprinting, not cookies. There is similar elsewhere. There's a link there to a blog post from Humix, I think, a Belgium company. I think it was Gentry who wrote the blog post way back a few years ago now, and saying, can we just do things to anonymize the tracking? So for me, users cannot be identified is the biggest thing behind my solution. I can't pronounce your name. I'm very sorry. Ike. I'm very sorry I can't pronounce the name. Again, can you drop that point in the Q&A? Let's discuss that in a few minutes' time. So the biggest thing for me here, the previous principle, users cannot be identified with any identifier at all. So all data collection has to be session-based, technology agnostic. I don't care if it's cookies, digital fingerprinting, or anything else. I'm okay with cookies. And this is actually what I use on my own website. But the thing is, the cookie itself expires after 30 minutes. So it matches the website session, the web analytics tracking definitions. And so I can't identify users. There's an identifier there, but it disappears within 30 minutes. I don't know who it was. The IP address, obviously, must be anonymized. I still want to capture it. I still want to know what country you're from. That's useful to the website owner. But I haven't narrowed down to what city you're from, or to the full degree of it. Therefore, I believe it should be fine to capture. The tool itself obviously can't capture any unique identifiers, any unique user identifiers, or any other personal identifiable information. With that as well, no unique identifiers can be passed across domains. It's within the single domain only. So cross-domain tracking, that's ruled out. Passing through that Facebook ID from Facebook through to your website, that also should be ruled out as an identifier. With that as well, the data that needs to remain within the tool that collects it. I say that and I think, well, it can be used for reporting purposes, like shared into a visualization tool, just not shared with other data tools, like either for remarketing purposes, like that. So the biggest thing here is block all the advertising aspects of this, all the remarketing with the data. So web analytics tools which do this should be fine. Even CRO and UX tools, in my opinion, trying to think it through, as long as they are session-based and no PI is captured, should also be fine. And for CRO, which are user-based tests, that breaks. But can you work with session-based tests? And obviously any marketing tools. I mean, again, actually a marketing tool, even that could be fine as long as the information on the website is not linked back to that individual's original click. So again, you can't track the individual. And as long as that data is not reused for any other remarketing purposes, that also feels okay. I admit here, I'm still feeling my way actually to work out for myself where I think the line should be drawn from my own perspective. For this to actually work well, I want the actual tools to build that into their system by default. I would love a Google Analytics, Adobe Analytics, AT Internet, Manamo, etc., to have an option which you can flick on, flick off. Single configuration and enables all these features by default. Would be amazing. And if a website has that tool in place and no other tools which break the rules, they've lost the entire concept of users. You can't get returning visitors anymore in your analytics tool. At that point, you would not need I've written here, cookie consent banner, a tracking consent banner, because everything you're capturing still respects the user's privacy, and that's the important thing. As a side point, could this possibly even be legal? Because the GDPR interpretation varies by country. I mean, according to the ICO, definitely not. According to them, from 2 years ago, analytics cookies are not necessary. Analytics cookies is a bad thing. You need consent. CNIL, CNIL, if you pronounce it that way, which is a French version of the ICO, I'm pretty sure, they're actually kind of okay with it because they say the website actually needs some traffic and performance statistics so to actually make the website works better. So cookies used for this purpose can be exempt from consent. And there's not an official certification, but they're in some way approving some WebAnx tools to work without consent being given. Now, this is an area where I don't have enough expertise to say definite rulings of it. It's legal interpretation. To be honest, I don't want to get into that argument too much. Let's have that debate for another time, a different discussion. And that's about it from me. So I actually want to open this up for debate. Get your thoughts. I mean, overall, do you agree with the whole no consent, no tracking? That's the simple line. Do you agree that, do you think that actually digital fingerprinting that's salted to economy say for 1 day is fine, but cookies which expire for an hour are bad? And if so, why? How do you think that? Everything I said here, basically, here's my solution. Do you think you should be able to capture more information than this? What would that be? Do you think something I'm saying here should not be allowed? And go backwards from there. Q&A things there. If you put something in the chat, appreciate it. Especially that comment, sessions require an identifier. That's the line. Hope that comes up in the chat as well. Let's see this. So going from the top, no order here. Can you please raise your hand actually if you'd like to come on stage to ask your question directly rather than me just reading it out. If you one of the options down the bottom of your screen, if any of you, the three of you or anyone else wants to raise their hand, please do so. And I'm going to go, that gets priority. Marcus, you're up on stage. We've got the next one there as well.
Hi there.
Hello.
Sorry for the bad picture.
It's okay. I don't think anyone can see you anyway. Oh, they can on the side. Yes.
All right. So my question is about what you stated on slide 14, or what's okay for you, and the last bullet said, or it wasn't the last one. Marketing tools without link to individuals click or any reuse of data. So that would be okay for you if there is an identifier that doesn't go back to the individual click, but to a keyword or an ad group, for example.
Well, in that so you've almost got the ID, which is then used to expose what the keyword was, like the G cleared.
Yeah, but Google is as far as I understood it, introduced alternatives to the Google Click ID parameter, which are called WBRAID or GBRAID, and they do not go back to a specific click, but you still can see which keyword or which ad or whatever converted.
Yeah. I mean, when I started writing this up, I was thinking, cool, this is WebAnx tools only. And I was pretty much writing the slide and went, well, actually, based on my definition, CRO tools and UX tools like session recording tools could also both meet the criteria as long as it's session-based, X, Y, and Z is also met. They went, well, but obviously Facebook analytics, etc., when it existed, that's all bad. I went, well, actually, no. In theory, if it was, again, the same rules of not tied to individuals and the data is not used for any marketing, it also could be okay. So I've got to sort of think through as I go along. And so, again, those IDs I hadn't heard of. I think my principle here is if they're used to pass information into the analytics tool rather than backwards to the marketing tool, and it's almost like a, what's it called? I can't remember the actual terms for it. Dimension widening in GA and Saint classifications or whatever it is in Adobe, or was back in the day. We got an ID to save time. That expands out into 4 fields, which are the keyword, the content group, etc. That to me still feels fine.
Yeah, to me as well. But interesting enough, you had something very different in mind when you wrote that down, and it triggered exactly what I experienced a few days ago, because those new identifiers were new to me as well.
Yep, I think that's the point of. I mean, for me, this is posing with these workshops is to try and challenge my own ideas and get feedback from other people. But also, when you write something down, you force yourself to actually think it through properly, and that's how I'm learning. So, like I said, I actually think this idea could actually work with marketing tools, as long as I don't cross certain lines. It's brilliant. Thanks for that question. That's my thought. In theory, that should be okay. Cool. I'll take you off stage and bring the next person up. There. Participants, bear with me a second. Here we go. Brilliant. And first of all, again, my apologies. Can you just remind me, how do I pronounce your name?
My name is Eike.
Eike.
Yeah.
Apologies.
Just
Eike, your question.
Start and the end, and just say Eike, then you have it. So, my question is about sessions. You said that session-based tracking should be okay.
Yep.
And I would really much like if that were okay. But web is stateless, so to create a session from page views, we need some sort of identifier from to stitch the page views into the session, and we need to persist this from page to page.
Yep.
And that's already against the law without consent. So
now this is where all right, two parts to this. One is, if we ignored the law for a minute, in your opinion, and your almost gut feeling, does this still abide by the spirit of the law and respect a user's privacy?
At first look, yes, but I'm worried. I mean, web tracking is ripe with abuse, so I'm worried that somebody would exploit this.
Yeah, which is a whole different point going further, is could it be used for bad purposes? But
I think that's the reason why the law is so broad as it is.
And now, I mean, I think the law is so broad, it's written by lawmakers who aren't digital people and actually understand it properly, partially. But also with that, this is on the point I said, like you said, the law says that's not allowed. But whose interpretation of the law? According to the ICO, agreed, all cookies are bad. But according to CNIL, they're actually okay with it.
Well, it's...
If I read this right, statistics, cookies based on these purposes may be exempt. The cookie has to be at very least a session-based cookie. So they've said those cookies are exempt from consent under their interpretation of GDPR.
Well, as far as the upcoming e-privacy directive is concerned, that's not okay, and an e-privacy is not something that the French authority can overrule.
Yeah, that's where, again, this is why it's way beyond my expertise. So, I mean, I said, to me, it feels like it should be okay, as long as it's session only and can't be misused, because you then can't identify the user. It's forgotten about as soon as the user leaves, or within 30 minutes or so. So it becomes an interesting point. Again, I want to make this almost a bit hypothetical rather than the legal interpretation.
Okay, so I have to say I agree with you. I think that would be okay. I just don't think it's actually allowed.
Cool. That's a whole different argument and thing we get into at some point in the future. Brilliant. Thank you very much for your thoughts there. Did anyone else want to come up on stage and have this discussion where you can feel free to disagree with me and tell me how I'm wrong? Yes, we actually got another hand raised. This is great. You get to go next. In this case, always raise your hand. My question to again will be, can you please just pronounce your name for me? Because I'm really bad with pronunciation.
Hi, guys. My name is Ivana.
Ivana. I would have got nowhere near that. So thank you for this.
No worries.
And your question?
Yeah, so My question was if this actually is possible to achieve with GA-GTM, but simply I just went to your website and checked it is. So
Yeah.
I've answered my question
No,
already.
cool. That is a good point. So, I mean,
which-
Matimo, which is a version of an offshoot of Piwik, has a solution for this already. They said they're privacy compliant, and the French senior actually agrees with them, apparently. For GA, the things you have to do within GA. One, anonymize the IP address. Two, set your cookie to be 30 minutes in length. That's the big one.
Yeah.
And that means you will not get returning users. Do not activate Google signals.
Yeah,
Do
definitely.
not allow Google to use its own guesses about who users are. It's basically based on the cookie only. That's the more thing for GA4. And obviously for yourself, do not capture any PII or anything else. And you can't do cross-domain tracking. But at that point, GA to me feels going, I'm breaking the law here, but I hope I'm respecting users' privacy. I feel like that's what I've done with my setup. Yeah,
plus campaign expiration window needs to be set up probably to, I don't know, 0, right?
That's...
Oh, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. The users are dead anyway.
Okay.
30 minutes. It shouldn't matter. I think plus as well, delete your data after 14 months, the shortest window, is probably a good thing. I think, again, actually doesn't matter because you don't capture users as such. I think everything else works.
Okay.
Cool. Thank you.
Great. Thanks.
Brilliant person up on stage. By the way, can anyone, if right now this session is being recorded, I do publish the recordings. Please, if anyone's actually made any comments, I'd rather not be displayed publicly. Hopefully everything's been okay, but let me know otherwise. And again, I'm always going to say, can you just please pronounce your name for me? Because I'm really bad.
Sure, Peter. My name is Piotr, but if you prefer Peter, you can call me your name as well.
Piotr, I'll try for that.
Okay, that was good. Nice. Cool. So I've seen on your website that you think that GA can be set up in such a way. So there's one thing that I would like to ask you. So for everybody who have a Google account and log into a Chrome browser, they accept the Google's terms of service, which says that the sites that have Google Analytics installed can track them. So even if with your configuration, all those poor people who are using Chrome as a logged-in user would get that data attributed to their profile. It won't be you as you won't own that data, but Google will exploit user-level details from your website to enrich the profiles that they gather on the Chrome users. Don't you think that this would be actually breaking the setup that you propose?
Okay. Good point. I'm just trying to think it through in my head. And yeah, give me a second here. So we're saying that Google identifies the users themselves, not within your Google Analytics setup, but within would it go to their own systems?
So let's break the context of our website. So you're a customer of Google. You have a Google account, a Gmail, and you're logged in with a Chrome browser. You browse the internet. You come on a site which has Matomo installed or AT Internet or whatever. They can't see the pages. They don't attribute it because they don't have Google Analytics installed on those sites. And then a user comes on a website with Google Analytics installed with your setup that forgets them from your perspective, but Google will still remember their visit to that site and attribute to their own profiles. It's a contract between Google account holder and Google.
But that doesn't go to my own, I mean, that doesn't go to my own Google Analytics account though at all. It won't use to identify the user within any data I can see at all. I don't think. And that's...
But you're supplying the JavaScript code without consent on your website. So you're basically enabling Google to collect that data.
Why do they need the JavaScript? I mean, I would need to look into it, to be honest. I mean, I've always questioned people who say that Google's using your data in these ways, in certain ways. I don't think Google's that smart in some terms. I think that they do have the walls up between different tools.
Well, just look up the Google
Yeah, I
search
can look
for
up
Google
myself.
account.
Yeah,
It's one of the first points, so it's really easy to find. But
cool.
Cool. It was nice being here.
If doing so, very good point. I need to think through how that would affect, my thoughts. But really good point.
Cool. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you. All right. Anyone else before I move to the next question? While we're in there, Dang Yang, thinking about CRO tools, do you mean any A/B testing has to be done on a single session basis? Users might see different things if they come back after session ends. Well, yes, that's what it means. If you want to not have a tracking consent banner, you would have to make sure the A/B test is session only. They could see different things that return to the website. You don't remember who they are. If you want to have user-based A/B testing, you must include a consent banner to say we're going to track you across sessions, identify who you are. That to me is the trade-off, and that feels fair enough. And Fabrizio, did you want to come on stage or not? Your hand hasn't been raised. That's your hand. Brilliant.
You hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. No, mine as well is much less technical, but actually touches on the point that Piotr was raising. So, I mean, when in public privacy is talked about, you never hear like the example of the small vendor that has an e-commerce shop and wants to track or remarket to its clients. So I think that the general public debate is usually about the fact that the big actors can actually track you around. And as far as I remember from my previous job, I was in contact a lot with the legal department, and because it was in banking, and they took out a German sentence that said that whatever you send to GA can be seen as a PII, because in theory Google at a later stage could just cross and identify the behavior of a single user, even if you don't provide actually what is usually seen as a PII, so an IP address or email or whatever. Yeah. So your point on slide 14, the one that I don't remember that Marcus brought up, is actually, I think, so if we do measurement, we don't care really about trying to look for that person everywhere on the internet. The problem is that the concern of the public is usually about the fact that the big actors can do that if we use their tools.
Yeah, and this is where it's interesting. So I remember years ago, people saying we can't use Google Analytics or any other Google tool because they're going to take all the information and build a competitor. That's what Google does. Everyone knows that. And because something about Facebook, Amazon, etc. It's a hard one because, I mean, in a way, that I don't know if actually they're clever enough to do it, is my interpretation. That's my honest defense against it. I don't think it's like sort of saying you could send as a startup all your ideas to your biggest competitor, and they couldn't act upon them because they're too busy with their own sort of life and with their own walls and everything else there. I kind of think Google, etc., doesn't do it because if they got caught, the amount they can get slammed PR-wise and fines-wise isn't worth it. And also, if they're doing it, they've kept that so quiet under the radar that no one's been able to prove it over the years. And you'd love to. I mean, surely you've had the competitors trying to infiltrate someone into their teams and like get them employed by Google to try and get the proof of the fact Google is lying to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
It's never come out. So I know the risk is there. I just don't personally sort of feel that it's actually happening like that. While they technically could do it, I don't think they are. Without any proof to actually prove my way is correct as opposed to the other way.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's the thing. It's almost a case of until proven otherwise, I'm okay to believe they're not reasoning our data behind our backs.
Yeah, I was just counter.
No, it's a really good
counter position. No, it's
Yeah.
fun because when you look at a cookie banner, it puts us against the user. Well, we actually don't care about most of the time. I mean, of course, if you are really into them heavily and precisely, of course, you would be interested in as much personal information as possible. But usually, it's much more interesting for us to see how they behave on the site. So we actually don't have a conflicting interest. Yeah.
And I think that's to the point here. I mean, if any company, I've actually a little bit more to talk about. So thank you for that. I'm going to talk about a little bit how extending the solution, just the ideas there, which may come up in the chat as well, possibly. I apologize, I haven't been following the chat. There looks to be some really interesting discussions going on there. And for anyone attending Measure Camp tomorrow who's found this interesting or parts of it interesting, please run a discussion on this. This would be great. I'm redoing this session tomorrow, so you're aware it's no really nice practice. But the parts which I don't talk about, which you find interesting, please lead a discussion on. Ultimately, you want to extend the solution. So with my solution, what if you're an e-commerce website and they make a purchase? Then you've got the eternal gray area of the transaction ID, because that is a unique identifier. Could you then add in a tracking message as part of the purchase process that is not a cookie, not a consent banner, but equivalent to that, to say, if you proceed from this point onwards, we have to identify you uniquely. What if a visitor logs in? Could you actually have a two-wave solution? One being anonymized, no login, and one being, if user logs in, we now know who you are, and we record exactly who you are. So you've never got a user cookie, you've only got a session cookie or a customer ID. And with that as well, would you have any consent banner is actually tied in to the terms and conditions for registration and login. And reading all the consent mode stuff yesterday, it's all quite interesting. You can almost argue this sort of solution would actually become the default option pre-consent or without any consent being given. So if you don't give consent, we track this. You give an extra level of consent, we do more, and so on. And I kind of hope not, because the idea behind my solution here is the companies using this would never need a consent banner. It wouldn't be a case of doing this as a minimum standard. It's a case of yes or no. My solution will not work for many companies. If you want to do remarketing, retargeting, if you want to capture people who are logging in, if you want to do X, Y, or Z, this solution is not for you. It's for the bloggers, the agency websites, for the publication websites where we can't, you're not a customer, so who cares anyway? So all the different areas, websites and businesses where visitors, it's nice to know, but we can live without it. That's what I actually want this solution for. Did anyone else want to raise any points, ask any questions? Please raise your hand. While you're possibly thinking about that, just comment for next week, conscious of time. Following some other requests on LinkedIn, we're reverting to my Volkswagen Belgium website visualization. Going to go through the details of that next week's session. I'll get that live either today or next Monday, depending on Measure Camp preparation time. Thank you, Marcus. Submitted a consent mode session for tomorrow. That's brilliant. You're comparing ages. Okay. And a lot more stuff going backwards. Marcus White, measurement and tracking being different. I mean, if you define tracking as tracking users, true. If you define tracking as the technical capture of data for measurement purposes, no. And I was thinking the second one. I think your definition is the first one. Are there any final questions? Or thoughts people want to raise? Marcus, do you actually want to have that quick discussion then on your measurement and tracking, given you are still writing about it? If so, please raise your hand. Cool. My details, if you want to get in touch with me, can be found there. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and come back to this. Cool. Tracking, measurement, a difference. So what's your definition of tracking?
Well, this is not my personal opinion. In my own use of the words, I use them as synonyms. Tracking is like measuring data on a website and processing it in some kind of tool. But in a legal context, there seems to be a differentiation and another meaning what tracking does. So if you do tracking, it has always something to do with building profiles,
users,
cross-site,
cross-domain,
cross-browser, cross-device, whatever. And where things get difficult is when you use Google tools. So if you're a hardliner, you can't even load libraries from Google servers. So but still, there's a way to collect data even without consent, as far as I believe, and as far as what I learned from talking to lawyers and people who are involved with privacy stuff. Under certain circumstances, and even when you use GA and you decouple the visitor's browser from GA with a first-party endpoint, and you don't send his IP address and or user agent, and use a short-term identifier, may it be a fingerprint or a session cookie or whatever, which might differentiate what you can expect in terms of problems with e-privacy. So all those facets make the stuff very complicated. But still, there is some amount of data that you should be able to collect without consent in order to see what's going on your website.
Yep, and that's what I think. I mean, I quite almost like that idea that the measurement and tracking being different things. I think the terms are totally wrong, or they overlap with what we say otherwise. But to say one is about, it's almost like session-based and one's being user-based, user profiles, like you said. That second one, you need consent for, totally agree. The first one, I mean, I almost think right now the new GA4 isn't a web analytics tool, it's a marketing analytics tool. Is how it's coming across me. It's all about trying to optimize your marketing, not your website. Whereas I usually care more about optimizing the website and getting the page hits and the navigation paths and knowing what traffic source people are using and what they're actually doing on the website. That's the important stuff to me. And that can all be anonymized.
Yeah.
Depending on
but
the
when it comes to marketing, there's still some, maybe there's still some amount of data that should be legal to collect. Some sort of, as I always try to call it, some right to do some sort of conversion measurement when I pay for the visitor that visits my website.
Yeah.
But that is really a hard thing to discuss, and then you can have an opinion, but you can't have something where it's not black and white.
No, and you've got the analyst point of view. You've then got the lawyer point of view. You've then got the regulators, and they're trying to understand the legal side and the technical side. And then you've got the companies that are muddying the waters by saying, but we want to still be able to do what we do because we make money out of this. Let's carve out an exemption for what we do as well. And the lobbying company doing it gets messed up. So that's why I think today, in a way, what I want to do is discuss the analyst point of view. What do we feel comfortable with? So cool. All right, conscious of time, thank you all very, very much for your time and a lot of the feedback. It's been amazing. Again, please get in touch if you've got an issue with anything you've said beyond the recording. But otherwise, that's it for this week. I hope to see a few of you tomorrow, and I think a few more people giving sessions is great. I saw that one. Thank you very much. And next week is on the visualization of the Belgium Volkswagen website. A lot more detail, explain how the tool works, how the approach works, and with some use cases for it, how it can actually add value. So have a great afternoon or day or evening, depending where you are in the world. Hope to see you next week as well. Bye. Oh, and I'll be still here for another 5 minutes in case anyone say hello to me. I'm on the tables or ask any final questions.